Alright, let's dive deep into a story that almost changed everything, a saga whispered in the corridors of power, a tale of ambition, big money, and a single phone call that nearly sent shockwaves through the football world. We're talking about Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian goal machine, and his blockbuster move to Chelsea, a transfer that was written in the stars, or so we thought, until one conversation, one private moment, almost brought the whole damn thing crashing down. Imagine the scene. The buzz is electric. Osimhen to Chelsea. It's the headline every football fan is refreshing their feed for. The fee? Astronomical. The expectations? Through the roof. Chelsea, a titan of English football, craving a striker with Osimhen's raw power, his predatory instinct, his relentless hunger for goals. And Osimhen, after conquering Serie A with Napoli, setting his sights on the Premier League, the self-proclaimed best league in the world. It felt like a perfect match, a marriage destined to produce a legacy of glory. We heard the whispers, didn't we? Personal terms, pretty much a handshake away. Medicals being discreetly scheduled. Agents were exchanging those self-congratulatory nods. In the bustling streets of Lagos, in the passionate heart of Naples, and in the expectant pubs of West London, there was a collective holding of breath. This was it. The deal was, for all intents and purposes, on the home stretch. Fans were already deep in Photoshop, slapping Osimhen's face onto Chelsea blue, dreaming of the goals, the celebrations, the sheer unadulterated joy he would bring to Stamford Bridge. The man himself, Victor, you can only imagine the turmoil of excitement and nerves. This wasn't just a transfer, it was an ascension. A step onto one of the grandest stages in world football. He'd fought his way from the dusty streets of Olusison to the pinnacle of Italian football, his every sinew strained towards moments like these. The Premier League. Chelsea. It was the culmination of a dream carved out of pure grit. But then, something shifted. A faint tremor at first, a subtle change in the atmosphere, the kind you only notice if you're paying very, very close attention. The confident leaks to the press began to dry up. The usually chatty insiders suddenly grew tight-lipped. A nervous energy started to replace the earlier euphoria. And it all, incredibly, seemed to trace back to something as innocuous, as everyday, as a single phone call. A call that was later dubbed in hushed tones as Osimhen's lost call. Now, lost how? Not lost in the sense of a bad network connection. Oh no, this was far more complicated. It was a conversation lost in translation, lost in interpretation, perhaps deliberately lost by shadowy figures lurking in the periphery, eager to stir the pot. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a call that carried a weight, an emotional charge that its participants never intended to spill over into the cold, hard calculus of a multi-million-pound transfer. The details were murky, as they always are in these high-stakes games. Who was on the other end of that line? What was said? Was it a last-ditch attempt by another club, a shadowy rival trying to hijack the deal at the 11th hour? Was it Osimhen's agent playing a dangerous game, leveraging Chelsea's interest to squeeze out a few more million, a bigger slice of the pie? The rumour mill, always hungry, began to churn with a furious intensity. Speculation was rampant. Some whispered it was a call to a former mentor, someone whose opinion Victor valued above all others, someone who perhaps planted a seed of doubt about the move, about the pressures of London, about the notoriously demanding Chelsea environment. Others suggested a clandestine meeting, a conversation with representatives of another European giant, keeping his options open, a classic power play. The silence from both camps, Chelsea and Osimhen's, only added fuel to the fire. What was once a done deal now hung precariously in the balance. The Chelsea board, a notoriously hard-nosed bunch when it comes to negotiations, reportedly got wind of this hesitation, this perceived lack of total commitment. And they weren't happy. Not happy at all. Their interest, once burning hot, began to cool. The message was subtle but clear: Chelsea waits for no one. If your heart isn't 100% in it, then perhaps Stamford Bridge isn't the place for you. Picture Victor Osimhen in the eye of this storm. One moment, he's on the cusp of his dream move, the next, he's engulfed in a whirlwind of uncertainty, his character being questioned, his commitment doubted. The frustration must have been immense. The anxiety, palpable. He'd always been a player who wore his heart on his sleeve, a warrior on the pitch, but this was a different kind of battle, fought in whispers, in coded messages, in the opaque world of football politics. His agent, a man accustomed to navigating these treacherous waters, was suddenly in firefighting mode, making frantic calls, trying to understand what had gone wrong, trying to salvage a deal that was slipping through their fingers like sand. Napoli, meanwhile, initially resigned to losing their talisman, started to see a glimmer of hope. Could they hold on to their Nigerian king for another season? Their president, Aurelio De Laurentiis, a master of the media game, probably watched with a wry smile, perhaps even fanning the flames a little himself. The drama was intoxicating, a high-stakes poker game where every player was trying to read the other's tells, and the pot was one of the world's most exciting strikers. And then, the twist. The truth behind Osimhen's lost call began to emerge, not in a dramatic press conference, but through painstaking back-channel diplomacy. It wasn't about another club, not directly. It wasn't about a last-minute demand for more money. It was something far more personal, far more human. The call, the one that caused all this chaos, was reportedly with someone very close to him back in Naples, someone who had become almost like family during his time there. It was an emotional, heartfelt conversation. Think about it, leaving a place where you're adored, where you've achieved legendary status, it's not just a career decision, it's an emotional wrench. This person, let's say a beloved figure within the Napoli setup, perhaps a long-serving coach or even a father figure he'd found at the club, hadn't called to sabotage the Chelsea deal. No, their plea was far more sentimental. They spoke of legacy, of what he meant to Naples, of the unfinished business, of the adulation he had, the kind that money can't always buy. They reminded him of the connection he had with the fans, the city that had embraced him as one of their own. It wasn't a demand, but an appeal to his heart, a question of whether the Premier League's glamour was worth leaving behind a kingdom where he already reigned supreme. It was raw, it was emotional, and Victor, being the passionate individual he is, listened. He didn't commit to staying, he didn't say he wouldn't go to Chelsea, but he was touched, perhaps momentarily reflective. Now, here's where that lost part comes in. Snippets of this intensely personal conversation, devoid of their true emotional context, were somehow relayed, or perhaps deliberately leaked, to intermediaries, and then on to Chelsea. And the interpretation? It was catastrophic. Osimhen is having second thoughts. Osimhen is doubting the move. Osimhen is using this emotional angle to angle for a better deal or to signal he's still open to other offers. The nuances were lost. The human element was stripped away, replaced by cold, cynical transfer speak. What was a moment of genuine emotional reflection was twisted into a negotiating tactic, a sign of a player not fully convinced. This was the dagger that nearly killed the deal. Chelsea, understandably, interpreted this alleged hesitation as a red flag. They needed a warrior fully committed to their cause, not someone who might be pining for his old club or easily swayed. The dream was turning into a potential nightmare, all because of a conversation about loyalty and legacy, misconstrued as a betrayal of a new commitment. The situation reached a boiling point. Days turned into a week of deafening silence, then stilted communications. The press had a field day, Osimhen to Chelsea in doubt, screamed the headlines. It seemed like the bridge to Stamford Bridge was crumbling. This is where true character is tested. For Osimhen and his team, it was a moment of crisis. They could either let the deal collapse under the weight of misunderstanding and misrepresentation, or they could fight. And fight they did. The climax wasn't a dramatic showdown in a boardroom, but a series of intense, brutally honest conversations. Osimhen's agent, realizing the true source of the problem, had to pull out all the stops. It required a direct line, a no-holds-barred clarification with the highest echelons at Chelsea. They had to explain the context of that lost call, lay bare the emotional weight it carried, and reaffirm Victor's unwavering desire to join Chelsea, to take on the Premier League challenge. It meant Osimhen himself probably had to convey his commitment, his passion, his readiness to bleed blue, in a way that left no room for doubt. Imagine those tense calls, the careful choice of words, the desperate need to bridge the gap of mistrust that had opened up. Perhaps a trusted figure, someone respected by both Chelsea and Osimhen's camp, stepped in to vouch for Victor's integrity, to explain how an emotional, private conversation was being maliciously spun or naively misinterpreted. It was about rebuilding trust, brick by painstaking brick. It was about Chelsea's decision-makers looking beyond the distorted whispers and seeing the man, the player, the burning ambition in his eyes. And slowly, painstakingly, the ship began to turn. The clarification, the raw honesty, it began to cut through the noise. Chelsea's hierarchy, after their initial justifiable caution, started to understand the human dimension, the emotional complexities that even multi-million-pound footballers face. They saw that Osimhen's brief introspection wasn't a lack of desire for Chelsea, but a testament to the loyalty he inspires and feels. The deal, which had been teetering on the brink of collapse, was hauled back. The relief, when it finally came, was immense. Not just for Osimhen and his camp, but for Chelsea too, who knew they were getting not just a phenomenal striker, but a man of passion and depth. The handshakes were finally exchanged, the contract signed, not with the initial straightforward euphoria, but with a newfound appreciation for the tortuous journey it had been. So, Victor Osimhen did make it to Chelsea. The goals came, the bridge roared his name. But that lost phone call served as a stark reminder of how fragile these monumental transfers can be. It's a world of high stakes, yes, but it's also a world populated by human beings, with their emotions, their loyalties, their moments of doubt. It showed how easily truth can be twisted, how communication, or the lack of it, can build empires or bring them crashing down. For Osimhen, perhaps that incident, that near derailment, added another layer to his steely resolve. He arrived at Chelsea not just as a star signing, but as someone who had navigated a storm, who understood the precariousness of it all, and perhaps, was even more determined to prove his worth, to validate the faith that was almost lost, then painstakingly regained. It's a side of the beautiful game we rarely get to see, a human drama played out behind the glaring lights, a testament to the fact that even in the most calculated of businesses, the heart, and its misinterpretations, can nearly change everything. What if that clarification never came? What if the trust wasn't rebuilt? Football history is littered with what-ifs, and Osimhen's Chelsea move almost became one of its most dramatic.